Hello, my name is Armando Quiroga.
Hi, my name's Sarah Passa.
Our project name is called Exploring Everyday Epistemology. And for this project, we did a hands-on interview-style research project that focused on questioning members of society based on what they hold to be true. Greatly influenced by the education we received regarding factual history and the way it's been blotted out of American narrative, we aim to inform the public about events and people that we found to be significantly misinterpreted.
We chose this research idea to further investigate the first few readings of Hutchins. Lies My Teacher Told Me by James Lowen and Plato's Allegory of the Cave were a big inspiration to test our epistemology and further our research. The following videos are results of our investigation.
So, again, we're doing something based on discovering truth, based on what you do know, based on what you've learned in education. I guess kind of leading into it, what do you know about the Titanic, besides, the fact that Leonardo DiCaprio was in it? The movie, that is.
Well, obviously, I believe it sank on, April 14th, 1912. This date it sank. 3 days, I believe.
Other information.
I'm pretty sure it was like 3 days it was out, and then like the night of the 3rd, that's when it sank. And a lot of people, and I don't know if you know this, but a lot of people, when they first thought that it split, they thought they were lying.
Yeah.
They thought it didn't actually happen. So you'll see a lot of older movies, they actually show the Titanic going as a whole piece. And it wasn't until later, till like witnesses actually came forward to prove that, like, hey, actually does snap in half. And then they came forward. And I don't know about photos. I think photos, they don't really show too much of that, but yeah.
Wow, that's a great start. You definitely know a lot more than we had ready. But we've actually been doing some research from this book called Lies My Teacher Told Me by James Lowen. Good read. And a fun fact was, it was discovered that it was taken into account that when the Titanic sunk, only 4 of the 143 first-class passengers were lost, while 15 of 193 second-class passengers drowned, along with 81 of 179 third-class passengers. Women and girls died. The crew ordered third-class passengers to remain below deck, holding thee at gunpoint. That's a quote from the book. There was only one first-class child to die. Her name was Helen Lorraine Allison, who died at the age of 4. In regard to the heinous amounts of deaths, did you know it took an hour to release the first lifeboat, and less than 2 hours later, the whole boat was submerged?
Yeah, about 2 hours it took to sink. Yeah, it's pretty spot on, I think.
Yeah. I guess you seem pretty educated on the subject.
Seen the movie, definitely.
There you go. Yeah.
And I used to read up stuff about it, for sure.
Yeah. Sure. I guess with this information that we provided, probably not too much new to you, how do you view your knowledge about the Titanic and the truth that we've told you about the history of this?
I mean, damn ship sank, man.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to, I don't really see why people put, like, conspiracies or... I mean, it's a boat that went in 1912. People thought it would float. It didn't. Sank. And then, then what was it? I think 1,500 people died.
Yeah.
Like that,
Yeah, 1,500.
But based on the information of, like, how the classes were ranked throughout the ship and how many people died in the third class based on the upper classes, does that change your point of view on how the ship was sent out and how everything went throughout there?
No, they were... Yeah, it was pretty much just first class, and then whatever the second and third can get on boats. Yeah. But it was it was first class went out, and there weren't enough lifeboats, and it was just I don't even know what they were thinking, man, back then.
I guess to go on another random question not on the list, where did you get this information from? Was this something that you found in your own personal endeavor into it? You got taught this in school, or?
Pretty sure I have a few books. I haven't picked them up in some time, but I read from those definitely, and just facts on the Titanic, and I don't know, maybe they were cited with sources, or maybe they had other information from other places, but I used to read from just books pretty much.
And may I ask what's your major?
I'm communications and media.
All right. Yeah.
I would have thought history or something.
I know. I was like, you have a lot of
really spot
information.
No,
so.
I just know stuff, man. I'm not that smart.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
About is centered around discerning truth from fact and opinion, or from fiction and opinion.
Okay.
So kind of challenging what you have learned, what you don't know, and things of that sort. So for you, I hear that you wanted to go into law enforcement of sorts.
Oh, you are correct.
So my question to you, Jesus.
not allowed.
Yeah. My question to you is, what do you know about slavery and its influences on the modern prison system?
The modern prison system?
Yes, sir.
I actually don't know on how slavery has impacted the prison system itself. I only know about certain things within the prison. You know, there's usually gang affiliations. There's definitely a race affiliation between different factions, I guess you can call them. There's a lot of stuff about isolation and going crazy because of isolation, but I actually haven't heard anything about slavery being introduced to the prison system.
Got you. Well, actually, in the Constitution, 13th Amendment, first section, it states that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime whereof the parties shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Basically saying, if you're in for a crime, if you have committed something that makes you incarcerated, you can work for pennies to the dollar, you can work pretty much forced labor in the prison system.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. It also states in an article from Slavery Prison Understanding the Connections that the connections between slavery and imprisonment have been used by abolitionists as a historical explanation as part of a radical political strategy that questions the feasibility of a reform as an appropriate response to prison expanding. This meaning that the idea of reform is being used as a means to further the slavery that is ingrained within the prison system, saying that we can set up these systems, we can make them better, but in actuality, they're using that to expand.
Wow.
Yeah. Looking at some statistics from a website known as the Sentencing Project, it is seen that Black Americans are incarcerated in state prisons at nearly 5 times the rate of white Americans, and nationally, 1 in 81 Black adults in the U.S. is serving time in state prisons. Mm-hmm. And in 7 states, there is a maintenance of a white-black disparity larger than 9-1. One of them being California.
Wow. Yeah, I kind of figured that much. I think I've read up on my own, and they're pretty similar numbers, I'd say.
Yeah, I guess.
Sadly.
Yeah, hearing this, does this change how you view prisons, and does this change your perspective on racism and slavery in modern America? And I guess to go a little bit deeper, does this kind of have any effect on your future career goals? Does this make you think a little bit more about, what you want to do when you go into that?
I don't think it really changed too much in my viewpoint. I did get enlightened about the slavery portion. I didn't really think about, the slavery work that they, the forced labor they would usually be doing.
Mm-hmm. Written in the Constitution.
Yeah, exactly. But I wouldn't necessarily say it changed my opinion or my mind. I would say it enlightened me and gave me more knowledge about the situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, just insightful.
Fair. And do you think this is something that we should teach in the education system, maybe in earlier ages, maybe middle school, high school?
You could implement that. I wouldn't say the slavery portion is the most important portion of the prison system. There are definitely some pretty crazy things that go on in the prisons, and I would say you could teach it into schools. Probably later on, maybe in like the high school arena. Probably due to them understanding what the meaning of what that is, and so I don't know. I feel like you could. It's good information.
Actual fact that they don't teach you.
Got it.
Yeah, so we're here asking questions about Christopher Columbus, Abraham Lincoln. My question to you would be about Helen Keller, and I guess, did you ever learn about Helen Keller, and if so, what were you taught?
Yeah, I did. I was taught that she was deaf and blind and read, or she wrote a book and had a very successful life as a deaf and blind person.
Yeah, that's pretty much the basics of it. Well, did you also know that she was a radical socialist who became a member of the wobbly industrial workers of the world?
I did not know that, no.
Yeah. Also, did you know that she was the first blind and deaf person to ever get a degree?
I did not know that either.
Yeah. According to research, she was also nominated for a Nobel Prize in 1953.
I feel like I've heard that before.
Okay, sweet. Yeah. And also, a majority of her life work was put towards her commitment and support for political changes.
Okay.
And the political changes were like disability changes towards disability and
just advocacy for it and more recognition for it. I guess hearing these new, not so hard-hitting perspectives, does this kind of change your perspective at all on Helen Keller and what you've learned about her?
Yes, but also no.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I do believe in the kind of conspiracy that she's fake. Just because, like, how is she deaf and blind from birth and able to do all that she has done? But I also know that it is possible, and, you know, you can overcome your challenges and have support and help to do that. But I just do find that conspiracy, like, a little tempting to believe in.
Can I peer a little bit into that? When did you first start getting into that idea of it being more so a conspiracy than, you know, something educational, something to learn from?
Well, I would say the conspiracy is that she is fake and that she is fake deaf and blind.
Yeah.
So she either is deaf or is blind, but she is not both.
Gotcha.
And I would say that was probably a few years ago. But I've learned about her years and years before that, when I was in grade school probably.
I guess conspiracists aside, do you think that this is something that should be taught into education, more so than just the elementary level of Helen Keller, deaf and blind, real or not?
Her achievements? Yeah, I think definitely.
Yeah.
Just to give more awareness and knowledge that people with disabilities are able to live normal lives and even, like, accomplish a lot.
Yeah. Like, the quality of life doesn't drop if you do have these conditions.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, sweet. And I guess what grade level would you say would be a good introductory state for this? Still elementary school, or?
I would say, like, 6th grade and above. I feel like younger grades, when they're taught, you know, information like that, where, they just aren't really paying attention, or they don't know the, like, hard-hittingness of it, the depth of it, and why it's important.
The ramifications
Exactly.
of it.
And, you know, that they should know about it and should care about it. I feel like that only comes when you're a little bit older, more mature.
Gotcha.
I'm not saying that 6th graders are mature, but
you know. No, definitely. Okay, sweet. That's awesome. Okay, so basically we're working on our capstone project for the Hutchins liberal arts major. Ours is focused on the idea of epistemology, which is basically the study of discerning truth from opinion. Basically what you learn in school versus what's actually factual once you go on the rabbit holes of what it means to learn about Christopher Columbus, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, what they actually did versus what you were taught about them. So I guess leading into it, what do you know about calories? And the research that went into finding what calories are?
Like, food-wise?
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm actually reading a book right now for my major called Bad Advice, when it, like, basically debunks a lot of medical myths. So it's really fun you're asking that.
So it's topical.
Yeah. Well, I mean, calories are basically, like, when you read a food label, it basically tells you how much is, like, not what it is. And, like, what is it? I don't even fucking know.
Correlates to something about, like, how much energy is burned or something.
Yeah, like, I know a lot of people think it's, like, a bad thing.
like it's a fat and carbs.
Yeah, and so people look at calories as, like, how much quote-unquote bad stuff is going into you, but I feel like it's just giving you a number about a substance within the food that's, like, good or bad for you. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess going into it a little deeper, in an article from the National Library of Medicine, it states that Canadian researchers used Aboriginal children in residential schools to learn about malnutrition. Adding on to that, in these experiments, control and treatment groups of malnourished children were denied adequate nutrition to measure how many calories it takes to make a human being survive.
Interesting.
So basically, they were starving kids, feeding them God knows what, in an attempt to count how many calories it takes to keep a human being alive. And it also states how, in these experiments, parents were not informed, nor were consents obtained. Even as children died, the experiments continued. So I guess,
believe that.
Yeah. So I guess hearing this now and what you've heard about calories, about people that calorie count, how does this kind of change your perspective about the research that you just heard about what it means to look at a box and see 300 calories? So.
I think for me personally, I kind of like to look into the science of things, and I like to read a lot of things that doctors talk about, just because like my mom's a nurse, so like I've kind of grown up leaning and learning more about what doctors have to say rather than like people,
Yeah.
because I feel like a lot of people use calories as like a negative thing. But I'm not surprised that happened, and I'm not surprised that they kind of manipulate those numbers on food boxes to like make people think a certain way about things.
Yeah.
But I mean, for me personally, it just makes me want to be more aware about what I'm putting into my body and like what it means to have a certain amount of like not just calories, but like what nutrition's going into my body and stuff. But I mean, I think it's important for people to know what they're actually reading rather than just looking at a number and assuming it's like always bad for you, you know?
Yeah.
So,
And I guess just focusing on the ethics aspects of it, you said
Absolutely,
like
yeah.
to go further into the research and the scientific understanding, does this kind of change how you view that thing now? Does it kind of like, you're going to look at a box now and think, oh,
Yeah.
wow, there is something
Yeah,
much more
I
morbid
mean,
there?
Absolutely, because I think that like now, like when I learned about what is it called, like equal trade on like certain like groceries and stuff, I think for me, once I learned about that, it made me want to, you know, look into food that's more ethically sourced than not, just because of like those, like you said, the experiment, like they are just treating like kids like terribly just to like learn something, but to know that you're supporting something like that, it's kind of hard.
Especially when it's so ingrained into
Yeah,
society now.
exactly. And I think that happens a lot with information, especially about food and stuff. So I mean, that's good to know, because like I didn't know that, but it's also nice to know that like it's people are like finally talking about it, you know, and people are finally like realizing that it's not just like a number.
And I guess to further that conversation, would you say that this is something that should maybe be taught in the school system at some point?
Absolutely. I mean, I think in health, I think like not in health per se, but like I don't know, even in science I feel like you could do it, but
no, either
I mean,
or.
I think it's, you have to think of how to like not dumb it down, but like find a way to like
present it in
like,
a way where people want to know about it.
Where people could like take that information and like absorb it to a way where you're able to understand what they're talking about.
Yeah, like the ramifications.
Because I feel like
of it.
science is so hard to kind of dumb down into a simple answer, because it's not a simple answer. So I feel like it definitely needs to be talked about, but I think that they need to find a way to like say it in a way that's able for kids and like adults to be able to have a conversation about it, because I feel like it's complicated. Like I'm almost 22 being like, what the fuck is it, like I don't, you know. So I feel like they should,
you don't want to teach them the morbid parts of it, but you also want to get
So when do you think would be a good grade to kind of introduce this topic?
Oh god. I mean, they could talk about it in PE, like PE, or like I know in elementary school, like we had like food days or whatever, and like we talked about food like all the time. So I feel like you could do it that way. But like I don't know, I feel like you could start it young and then just continue the conversation, I guess.
Even if you don't fully understand, just get the idea in there.
Because I feel like there's like a very simple answer you can give little kids, but then like give them like a deeper answer like later.
Yeah, like over time, once they grow up and understand things. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess one final question is, what's your major?
I'm a communications major.
Great.
I love it. It's very fun. I'm excited to do whatever I do with it. But yeah, we talk about media myths all the time, and like what it means to absorb what you're absorbing, and like what it subconsciously means as well. And also like work on those biases stuff. So when you asked me that question, I was like, wait, that's so funny. I'm literally like learning about that like right now. So yeah, I love it.
Sweet.
It's very fun.
Armando has a better explanation of it. I can't explain
education teaches you things and says it's fact as opposed to what's really truthful out there. So topics such as Christopher Columbus, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, these historical figures that we hear so much about and learn so minimally about, versus what they've actually done, what tragedies they've caused, so on and so forth.
Well, you're talking to me as a Black American, so I'm pretty aware of that kind of stuff.
So hopefully we touch on some things that you haven't heard of, but definitely if you're one to already know some things, that also helps our cause, because it shows that people are learning, and we'll peer into how you did that. So
So one of the questions I really had a hard time like taking into consideration after learning all we learned in elementary school about Christopher Columbus. What do you know about Christopher Columbus?
As of now, or back when I was in school back then?
Either way, like both.
Well, basically, European guy came over here, basically discovered America, even though it was already discovered. Basically, want to know, basically raped, killed, and kind of took over the whole, a lot of America, basically. Basically, it was kind of seen as this, like, kind of like this, this giant, like this good person, but really he wasn't. And again, I don't really bash the guy personally because I feel like it's easy for us to say, oh, he was a bad guy, but in reality, like, we live in different times, new technology, new perspectives, right? So it's hard to criticize somebody who was just trying to find a better way of life in a way. He did it the wrong way, but nonetheless, it was a different time. So I think we got to understand, like, it was wrong what he did, but like most of us probably done the same thing given those circumstances. So.
Yeah, that was the history at the time.
Yeah.
And so we gathered some information from James Lowen's books, Lies My Teacher Told Me, and some of the information was quite surprising. I mean, you got most of the information, but there's a little more gritty details into it.
Yeah, of course.
He was not actually the first person to discover America and sail the ocean blue.
Yeah, of course.
But did you know that Vikings were actually some of the first people to travel to America, besides the Native Americans that were already there?
That I did not know.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because a lot of people just think, Native Americans were there and then Christopher Columbus came and discovered. But it's actually
America was founded.
Yeah, but the Vikings went and traveled there prior to Christopher Columbus and discovered America as well. And then something quite triggering to know. I mean, you had a little insight of it, him being a rapist, but his biggest endowment was his massacre of domestic Western people. And in preparation for that, he had his soldiers rape and kill a bunch of women to desensitize them.
Damn.
Yeah.
So as opposed to just having them go there and do these tragedies, he had them under the sense that they needed to, and to desensitize them to the fact that this was necessary as opposed to something that was just going to happen, inevitable.
Well, I would even argue now, like, that's any conqueror's objective, right? You look at the Russia-Ukraine stuff. Not only they got to bomb Ukraine, for example, they got to rape people. It's just that power trip that these people have.
Superiority.
Exactly. Yeah. That's with any nationality. It's not just, white people or Christopher Columbus. That's a human problem, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So that hierarchical sense of
exactly.
understanding.
But based on the information, how do you feel about Christopher Columbus and what you were taught before, what you've learned now?
I want to hate him, but I feel like it's a human problem. It's not just tied to him specifically, So he did wrong, but again, we still see it in the 21st century. So it's just different times.
Yeah. And do you think that there's a certain time period that it should be, or like certain time, like elementary school, middle school, high school, where it should be implemented that he isn't this great person?
I think middle school.
Yeah.
I think that's too much for little kids to know about, because little kids they're growing up. They have to grow up. You can't just shove this all in their face. But by the time you're in middle school, your brain is at least somewhat able to understand these things better. Yeah. Like, I didn't know kids could die at a young age until I was 10. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think by middle school, I think it's kind of more appropriate to kind of include something. So.
All right. Well, and what's your major?
Sociology.
Sociology. All right. Just trying to figure out like where people are and where they sit in the ideas of history. So
obviously, sociology gives you a little more background. So.
Yeah.
So basically, our topic of research for this whole little capstone project is epistemology, basically, which is the study, of discerning truth from fact, or truth from opinion, and what you know from what you've learned in school.
Okay.
And my question to you right off the bat is, what do you know about eugenics? More so, what have you heard about it, or what have you heard talked about in history when discussing maybe Nazis, World War II, anything like that?
I've heard very little about eugenics, and the stuff that I have heard about is in economics, not history.
Okay.
But that was a little bit ago, so I don't remember much, if I'm being honest.
Any beginning ideas, anything barely you can remember?
Honestly, no. I only remember the word, I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. I guess to give you some background on it, eugenics is defined as the study of agencies under social control that may improve or impair the racial qualities of future generations, either physically or mentally. Okay. So, I guess mentioning Hitler and the Aryan race, he thought that blonde hair, blue eyes, that was superior.
Yeah.
While it was prevalent in Germany, Great Britain, and Italy, American eugenicists disproportionately targeted Latinx, Native Americans, African Americans, poor whites, and people with disabilities, declaring certain individuals unfit feeble-minded, or antisocial, resulting in the involuntary sterilization of at least 60,000 people through 30 states' laws in the 1970s. So I guess hearing this now, apart from the German World War II aspect of eugenics and the research done there, how does this affect your idea of eugenics in America and the idea of eugenics as a whole? Does it change anything? Does it?
I mean, it's sad that it happens here in America.
Yeah.
You want to always think like America is like, oh, freedom.
Yeah.
People can be whoever they want to be. But
But it's not something that you just put aside. It's something that you could see in America,
Yeah.
right? Okay. And
real issue.
no, yeah. And I guess going back to that statement, do you believe that a lot of American history is kind of gilded, kind of built in this greater perspective of where you can do nothing wrong, as opposed to there are countless things that have gone wrong in America?
Yeah, I would definitely say it's kind of painted in a bubble of good things when that's not near the truth.
Yeah. Do you feel like this is something that should be taught in education / history when
Most
addressing?
definitely.
Yeah, okay. And at what point do you think it should be taught? What grade? What age?
I would say begin like around 7th, 8th grade.
Something grade,
Middle school.
Okay. And any reasoning for that?
I feel like that's when kids are beginning to mature and they can actually have a greater understanding and appreciation, not only for the past, but for the problems of the world.
Yeah. Okay, sweet.
So I'm going to make a little preface.
Go
This
for
whole
it.
thing kind of is just like describing how in Hutchins, one of our first couple readings was Lies My Teacher Told Me and Dangers of a Single Story. And basically it just describes how we are taught all these different single stories about history and lies, quote unquote, that are describing the main attributes of the heroes we call. And the single stories are told on, but we don't hear the background stories and we don't hear the different harsher sides of things. And it's understandable not to teach them in lower grades, but throughout the years we are kind of testing to see where people think that they should be implemented into schools. So
Yeah.
Well, it's hard because specifically with history, you always hear the side of the victor. So you
Yeah.
don't really hear the whole story. So
Yeah.
it makes it a little difficult.
And maybe ask what your major is.
Yeah.
I was a business / economics major.
Okay.
Nice.
And you said was. Does that mean you're something
I
different?
graduated in December.
Oh,
nice.
sweet. Okay. Congratulations.
That's why I'm here. I was picking up tickets.
Oh, yeah.
I know,
dude.
we should check that.
We should check that
Right.
out. All right. Well, thank you for your
Yeah,
time.
thank you very
for your
much.
mind.
And then
Of
we'll grab
course.
a